Hello, welcome to my channel Vadi's Tech Space. I am Vadi. In today's video, I will show you how to deploy Azure API Management in virtual network while still retaining public access to the APIM hosted APIs. So this approach allows us to secure internal resources while still enabling external access for the trusted clients. Let's get started. Now, before I go to Azure portal, let's set the stage here by discussing a scenario. Okay, so imagine that you have a set of users, one from on-premises, who are accessing the Azure resources, that's the web app or the web server here. Okay, and internally these guys access the API hosted on the API management. The API management accesses the backend API servers where the APIs are hosted, and APIs will access the SQL for their database needs. Now, there are also a set of users who are accessing the third-party apps, and these third-party apps have integrated the APIs shared by us. So they access the APIs over the API public FQDN, fully qualified domain name. Now, just this, of course, this increases the attack surface. Ideally, all these needs to be private and have a single entry point to the outside world. Or, but the scope of this video is to show how you can get the APIM into external virtual network and access the backend services over a private IP or privately. Now, let's go to the here our architecture. So if you want to secure it, you can deploy a VPN here, VPN gateway here, and have a IPsec tunnel to your uh, on-premise, or you can install a express route as well. So you can have a private endpoint for your web app and the Azure SQL, so making everything private. So web server already has a private IP, so you don't need to do anything here. So what happens is that in this scenario also the web server will access the API management over the public FQDN only. So if you want this also to be accessed privately and you are not exposing any APIs, then you have to go with the internal option of virtual network configuration in API management. But this video is for external. Uh, you can watch my video on the how to integrate internally the APIM in the playlist here. So third-party apps will still remain, they'll still access the API management over the public IP, public FQDN of the API management. So now let's go to the Azure portal. I am in the Azure portal now. I have a APIM resource created and it's of developer tab and it is publicly available. Okay. And if I go to the network would be as none. So it's not part of any virtual network. I go to the APIs under the APIs where I have added one existing API here. Employee service is the name of the API. So I have list employees operation here. So if you see the addresses, the backend endpoint is a public IP. So this 20.5.197.189 is a VM called APIM test VM. And as you see, this is the IP. This is where I have hosted the API. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is that just to show you that it is publicly accessible, I will go to settings and take the URL here and access it. This is my URL and I'm going to click here and I'm going to say employee. So as you see, I get a record back here. Okay. So that means this is publicly accessible. Now what I'm going to do is that with this setup here, now I'm going to go to the network section here. Okay. And I'm going to click on external. So now before I show you how to do it, there are a few things you need to take care of. Okay, so the network which you're adding to, like let's go to this network, Australia East network, where I'm deploying this uh, APIM. So you need a dedicated subnet. Okay, you need a dedicated subnet which we can delegate it to the APIM. Okay, so you should not have any resources picking IP from this subnet. Now you should also have a network security group. Okay, so this network security group will have few inbounds and outbounds enabled, allowed. Okay, this is based on what you're going to use, but there are few minimum things that you have to enable. Now your 443s and 80s, like HTTP and S, that one, and 3443 is your management API port, management port of the APIM. So again, here for the test sake, I'm added any, but I would not recommend any. But if you, for the real implementation, you have to go from the internet to the virtual network, or from the virtual network to the APIM. So these things, there are Microsoft guidance on this, so you can follow that. And also you need a HTTPS 443 allowed as an outbound. So again here, NA is not the right way to go. You have to restrict it to the source and the destination. You can use the service tags to restrict it between the resources of Azure. Now, now, these are the prerequisites. You need to have them. All right. So now I'm going to click. When I click on external, it will ask me to select a VNet. I click on the VNet here. Okay. I will select, there is only one network here, which is OS East network. All right. And my subnet is the SNet APIM internal, the one which I showed you. That's a new subnet which I've created. And the public IP address which I need is the APIM internal 01. Okay. So I'm going to have this, and I'm going to click on apply now, and then I'll click on save here. So now I clicked on save, and this is going to take a while. So I'm going to pause this video and come back when the deployment is done. The deployment is complete, so it's in the external mode now. I go to the overview, nothing changes here. You still have the public IP. Okay. Now let's go to the APIs, where my API added in the Azure API Management accesses the backend API over a public IP. Now that is something which I'm going to change. I'm going to change it to a private IP now. So let's go to the API management here, API PM, where where my API has been hosted. I'm going to take this 10.0.0.5, and instead of a public IP, I'm going to replace it with the private IP here. Okay. So once I do this, I'm all set. I'm going to click on save. Okay, so now if I go to the design, my backend should be this. And just to make sure that there is no public involved here, ideally I would want to remove the public IP from the machine. So I'm going to click on this and go to the overview and disassociate the uh, IP from that machine, API machine. So while this is happening, it should be quick. This is done. Once this is there, I go to the VM and I could click on refresh. I should not see the IP address here. Okay. So now, still, if I take the APIM URL, right? If I take the APIM URL and I try to access incognito and click on this, now I should still able to see the record, right? So this one is because now we have the connectivity between private connectivity from the API management to the network resources here. So this is how you can inject the APIM into the virtual network in an external mode. If you don't want to expose the APIM publicly, then you have to go with an internal mode. Okay. So if you found this video helpful, feel free to give it a like and consider subscribing. Until next time, take care and thank you for watching.